Hi, I'm Magda from Interiors Exteriors. In this episode, I'll show you a 2-room apartment in a block whose owner is a designer, so she took care of every detail of this interior.
Good morning, my name is Jolanta Bernatska and I am an interior designer. I also designed this 37 square meter apartment. I prepared for this renovation for about 20 years at least mentally. Then for about 3 years I collected materials. The starting point was this wallpaper, and all the colors that later appeared in the other materials of this apartment came from it. The apartment is constantly changing, maybe not as much as before, but it's still evolving with new elements being added all the time.
We start as usual at the entrance, and right away we have a closet with these louvered fronts that were painted by the carpenter with lacquer, which makes them so smooth and pleasant to the touch. And even though they're wooden, they're not, rough but smooth, which makes them easy to clean. And behind this first door, we have a utility closet where there's a ladder, a vacuum cleaner, and here in the back, shelves were made to make use of the space above the vacuum cleaner. Because if they weren't there, of course, the vacuum cleaner could have its hose left unassembled, but as you know, in small apartments, storage space is really useful, so these shelves were definitely just more optimal. And they're in the back because there's an intercom in the front here. Not out in the open, but hidden in the closet, and that's a great solution because on one hand you can still hear it and it's still easily accessible, but it's not in plain sight. And as you know, those intercom handsets just don't fit visually with many interiors. And up here we also have more things hidden in the cabinet, like the fuse box, which we should always have easy access to, but which usually isn't so pretty that we'd want it out in the open, and the router. And the plan is to add an extra insertable shelf here in the future to make better use of the space above the router, but at the same time not to build custom cabinetry there so as not to limit access to the fuse box. As for this part of the closet, here we already have clothes. There's a rod for jackets and shelves for shoes at the bottom. On this side of the hallway there's an entrance to the living room, and here behind me are the doors to the bathroom. However, before the renovation, the hallway was a bit bigger because these doors were further back, and here there was an entrance to the bedroom. However, this solution had some drawbacks. It made the bathroom smaller, and it was harder to find enough space for wardrobes in the bedroom. That's why after the renovation there was a change, and here additionally a decorative curtain appeared, which is hanging here. And do you know what it is? I won't say it because it's also the name of a male genital organ, and I'm afraid YouTube might limit the visibility of my video because of that. However, such tassels are rarely used with curtains nowadays, but as you can see, they can look beautiful. A very classic solution. A mirror and these beautiful decorations were installed on the side of the wardrobe. And these are decorations like the one I'm holding in my hand, compressed wood dust. When the furniture is going to be painted entirely, by installing such decorations on it beforehand, we can achieve a really nice effect. After painting, it would be hard to blend it in like that. Of course, you can always try to paint it by hand, but as you know, when the whole piece of furniture is being lacquered, attaching and gluing this beforehand is definitely a better idea. So if you're planning any custom-made furniture, think about whether something like this might be useful for you. And as for the mirror, Jola noticed it. I probably would have missed it, but actually the mirror was cut flat at the edge, so when you look at it from an angle, you can see some slight unevenness. If the carpenter had sanded it a little more and made some gentle grooves, the mirror would definitely look more elegant. There are 2 different switches installed on the wall here because Jola wanted to test which solution is more convenient to use. As expected, she confirms that the button you can quickly swipe with your hand as you walk by is definitely more comfortable, while the knob, on the other hand, requires more focus and you have to stop for a moment to switch it. In my opinion, this switch could work well by the bed for turning on a night lamp or by a desk, but in a hallway or a place where we move quickly, I would definitely go for these. And right here we have beautiful frames, and look how nicely this small picture is displayed here. It's a very nice decoration, and you probably wouldn't have guessed that it's actually just a business card. Look, it's the same here in the frame. On the back there's the author and contact information, and here just a beautiful graphic. These business cards last longer with us. We can use them as decorations, we can use them as bookmarks in a book, they're pleasant to use. And those that only have text, which aren't so aesthetic, usually end up in the trash quickly. So on one hand, it's a tip for you on how you can use pretty business cards, and on the other hand, it's an inspiration for everyone who creates business cards to maybe consider something more aesthetic, something your potential clients will actually want to keep for years, something they'll want to use. The kitchen has no window and is small, and on top of that, a washing machine also had to fit in there. However, thanks to the U-shaped cabinetry and upper cabinets, there's no shortage of storage space here, and there's also a large countertop. However, Yola mentioned that, looking back and knowing she doesn't cook much, she would have chosen a 2-burner cooktop. In this spot, there are gas pipes that have been covered at the top with cabinetry, and at the bottom there's a cover with the same decorative elements I showed you on the wardrobe. And just like there are gas pipes on this side, in this corner of the kitchen there's a shaft, chimneys, and again it was necessary to make the right cutout. This time, there are just tiles here, there's no cabinet at the top, but there definitely is one at the bottom. Everything had to be cut properly, but this space isn't wasted. Here, under the countertop, there are shelves all the way to the end, and obviously you don't have good access to them from here. This isn't a cabinet you reach into every day for things you use regularly, but as some extra storage space, it's fantastic. It's definitely better to have shelves underneath here than not to have them. The handles on the cabinets are these knobs that are attached directly to the front. Look here from the side, you can see that there's basically no space between the knob and the front, so when you grab this kind of knob, you get the feeling that your fingers slip off, and if you grab the raised part, your fingers touch the front, so it leaves fingerprints and it gets a bit tight there. So it's not really the most ergonomic handle, and if you care about grabbing it comfortably, it's better to either choose a slightly different shape or make sure there's some space. You can install some additional, screws there, like spacers for the screws, so the knob will be set a bit further out and it will definitely be more comfortable to use. That doesn't change the fact that it's really beautiful, and for some people its shape definitely won't be a problem. In recent years, there's been a particular emphasis on cutting tiles at a 45-degree angle so that the pattern on both sides of the tile goes all the way to the corner. And of course, it's a very aesthetic solution, but it also comes with a higher risk of cracks, especially in places where there's a lot of foot traffic or where something heavy might hit the wall. There's a certain risk that it will get damaged more easily than if the tile wasn't cut at such a sharp angle. Here, the tiles weren't cut like that. Here, we have a whole tile on this side all the way to the end, and here the second one is a trim strip covering the edge, which makes the whole thing look very neat. As you can see, sometimes it's not worth trying so hard, or paying so much attention to details that later turn out to be meaningless. In other countries, tiles are often installed in such a way that you can simply see their edge. No one worries about cutting them at a 45-degree angle, and people still live comfortably. Other things are more important. A U-shaped kitchen layout means there are quite a few corner cabinets. And here we have an example of an upper cabinet where the hinges are not on the side of the cabinet, but in the middle. Since there's no side panel, we can access the back directly. A small metal frame was made, although I think it's a ready-made element with a hinge which allows the front to be mounted. It's stable, and the cabinet opens in a way that's convenient, because if it opened here, it would be much harder to reach and it would be right in your face. There are a lot of decorative elements in this kitchen. Even the cups are beautifully displayed on hooks. But what impressed me the most is this plaque here on the side with the street number, which used to hang on Jola's family home. In the bathroom, there are terrazzo tiles on the floor in a small format, and the same tiles are also in the hallway and the kitchen. So this whole part of the apartment near the entrance has a uniform floor, and the pattern itself refers to the terrazzo on the staircase. As for the color scheme, both the floor and the other elements of the bathroom are beige, coffee, and cashmere. A very warm color scheme that also matches the rest of the apartment. And look, even the pipes have been repainted in such a nice color and they look great. And I have to tell you, I'm a huge fan of repainting pipes so that they blend into the space, instead of building a cover, because yes, drywall still looks okay, just like a wall, although it does take up quite a bit of space, but those plastic covers, I'm definitely not a fan of those. I definitely prefer the pipes, and here the floor is also finished very nicely and cut to fit around the pipes, so it's just inspiring. Up here, however, we have a cabinet next to it, also made by a carpenter, although the fronts are from a hardware store, and there are also decorative panels on the side, just like I showed you earlier. And here on these doors we have a decorative panel that hasn't been repainted yet. As for the walls, take a look at how the tiles have been laid. Only up to a certain height. They're on all the walls, but only up to here. So when we want to wash our hair or wash ourselves while standing, there's a risk of splashing the wall. And sometimes the wall does actually get splashed. Yet nothing happens, and someone might say it's just a matter of time. The thing is, before the renovation there weren't any tiles on the walls at all. For many years there were no tiles, just walls painted with good quality paint, and nothing happened. So if nothing happened for several decades, now that there are tiles up to a certain height and the wall only gets splashed higher up, I expect that even more so, nothing will happen. And of course that doesn't mean it will work in every bathroom. Different bathrooms have different walls and different ventilation, so it can vary, but here it clearly works. The ventilation is really good. And look, at the top there's a vent that has a very nice cover, painted the same color as the wall, so it doesn't stand out at all. And since we're already up here, also pay attention to the dryer. These are rods that you lower down, and that's how you hang the laundry. Then you pull everything back up so you can use the bathtub while the clothes are drying. In small apartments, this kind of solution definitely helps save space. A drying rack placed in the middle of the room obviously isn't very convenient, but this way, above the bathtub, nothing gets in the way. The living room was arranged in an unusual way, tailored specifically to Jola's needs. Usually in living rooms, we can find a very extensive lounge area with a big sectional sofa and a television, but here, not only is there no television, there's not even a sofa. Instead, there's a large table and a comfortable workspace. This table used to be in the design studio where Jola worked, and when the studio was going through changes, the table was given to Jola as a gift. It has a conglomerate tabletop and a wooden leg. The leg was added here from another table, and the whole thing really looks great together. The only downsides are that the tabletop is cold, and the table is so heavy that it's not easy to move. On this side of the room, there are two dressers with deep drawers that can hold a lot of things. Jola keeps her work accessories here, like samples, swatches, and measuring tapes, because even though it seems like a designer mostly works at the computer, and that's mostly true, a lot of these accessories are definitely useful, and unfortunately, they take up quite a bit of space. A few home tours ago, I told you about some unusual ways to store things behind the sofa or behind a curtain, and here we have an example of that kind of solution. Two suitcases are here. One is the color of the living room, so it's out in the open and blends in nicely with the surroundings, while the other one is behind the curtain and you can't see it at all. It's green, so it would definitely stand out if it were in plain sight. Against the wall with the wallpaper, which plays a key role in this apartment, there's a beautiful console table with various decorations. There are not only new things styled to look old here, but also sentimental items made by the niece, like the little dishes, as well as retro things like this painting or the candle holder on the wall. And these two retro items were bought on Instagram. There are quite a few profiles where you can just shop, and it's an option that didn't exist just a dozen or so years ago, and today it's really quite a big market. A few years ago I showed you an apartment with the same layout and the same square footage. However, it was arranged completely differently, with an open kitchen and a bedroom separated in such a way that there was still space for a workspace in part of the hallway. It's really hard to believe that the base of these apartments is the same. I'll link the video in the description so you can see for yourselves how differently you can arrange the same apartment.
And interestingly, both apartments were renovated around the same time, with the renovation budget for one being over $100,000, while the budget for the other was about $70,000 to $80,000.
The bedroom is unusual because there's no bed, just a sofa bed that isn't unfolded on a daily basis, since if you live alone, this part is enough for sleeping. And here, on the other side, there are two dressers, just like in the living room, only this time they're white. There's a large chest under the window where less frequently used samples are kept, and its top serves as a table. As I mentioned to you earlier, before the renovation, the entrance to the bedroom wasn't from the living room, but from the hallway. So, in this spot there used to be a door, and next to it a wardrobe that was half the size of the current one. After moving the door, it was possible to build a wardrobe from wall to wall on the shorter side of the room, which makes the space better proportioned, and you don't feel how long and narrow the room actually is. In this part of the wardrobe there are shelves from top to bottom, while in the other sections there are mainly rods, with shelves only at the top. One more tip about knobs. Look, these are very pretty ceramic knobs, which have a magnetic lock here. And as you can see, when I move the knob, nothing changes here. When I close it, I have to use a bit more force to unlock them. That extra force doesn't matter as much with a regular handle, because pressing down on the handle is much easier than turning a knob. You can get used to it, but if there are children in the house, they might have trouble opening such doors. So if you care about having those stylish knobs, it's better to use regular locks without magnets. That's all for this time. If you're still hungry for inspiration, be sure to check out our other videos and our store at wnetrzazewnetrzaofficial. I'll be waiting for your comments and likes. Make sure to subscribe to wnetrzazewnetrza and see you next time. Bye bye. Thank you.